You're listening to Crash FM, and all I can say is I have an awesome job. I crash in the sun, you crash in the traffic. I'm Stryker. Hang out with me for all the action.
Yeah, we said we let it go, but we settled for the last. Couldn't let you want it though. Who am I to let you down? No, who am I to let you down? Down, if you let me walk away, maybe then we'd lose it all. No. Who am I to let you
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for me. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
I gotta tell you, it is looking tough out there this weekend. These drivers are fighting tooth and nail. What do you think? They're racing for pink slips? We're having some great matchups, and it's only going to get more competitive as the weekend goes on.
It's a short track bull ring. It is round 3 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series, and it could be one of the biggest wild cards of the season. It is Richmond Raceway, 3/4 miles of chaos in the Commonwealth, and we get set for round 3 of 6 tonight, marking the halfway point of the 2020 Pro Series. Good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. Jacob Seelman alongside James Pike and Blake McCandless as we get set to rock and roll and, James, potentially rumble before it's all said and done. This race could make your Coca-Cola Series hopes if you're a driver looking for some points, or it could just as easily break them as we saw for a couple of drivers in this race a year ago.
If you want a case study as to how pivotal this race can be, not only are we halfway through the Pro Series at the end of tonight's race, but I look back to last year in the case of Cody Bias. Cody Bias had the fastest car in the field and led just about all of the first 3 quarters of this race 1 year ago, and then decided to take tires as a rash of yellow flags came out. He got caught up in an incident with about 40 laps to go, never was able to recover the track position, finished 20th after running in the lead the entire race to start. And that difference in points ultimately was a good chunk of the difference that kept him out of the Coke Series for 2020. So someone may find bad luck here, but someone may survive all the madness that we expect to happen tonight and find good luck as well.
Blake McCandless, when we look at this, we always talk about short tracks opening up opportunities for drivers to potentially break through and get a victory. If you're looking for a breakthrough driver, who are you looking at tonight?
Well, I think one guy that you really have to look at hasn't quite had the success early on that I think even he expected, but I think Donovan Strauss is going to be somebody that I'm really going to keep my eye on for this race. Richmond seems to play right into his favor. Hasn't exactly found all the speed that he wanted either at Auto Club and got caught up in an accident late at Daytona, but I think Donovan Strauss could be one to watch in JDR Graphics Toyota, who could make quite an impression for the youngster tonight.
We're going to see if we can't get a look at where in the world we're heading to as far as Richmond Raceway and get you set up for what you're about to experience here tonight over the course of round 3 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. There we are from high atop the D-shaped Richmond Raceway Oval. James Pike, 14 degrees of banking in the corners, but as you see this race and you look at how it plays out, oftentimes that 14 degrees of banking feels a lot flatter than it actually is.
This race is very much like a flat track of old, and it is old, in fairness. Richmond Raceway actually beginning their celebrations for their 75th anniversary, which officially is 2021, but they started those today, very conveniently on the day that they host the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. But it races absolutely like the old school racetracks that NASCAR got its start at in the Southeast. And I think, if anything, there's a lot of relief in the field that Jimmy Mullis is not racing in tonight's race, because we know how good he is at flat tracks. But his teammate for Richmond Raceway Esports, Zach Novak, is part of the field. Came online and tweeted in particular how he'd like to get a victory for the hometown track tonight. Same for Garrett Maines, who comes from the Richmond area and would also love to get a victory on his home turf.
That he would. I actually mentioned it a week ago as we were going off the air on social media, and Richmond Raceway Esports immediately came back with word on the street of, Zach Novak having some home turf to defend this week. So he's going to want a victory, and we'll talk a little bit more about Novak undoubtedly as this race goes on. Blake, keys to the race. What do we need to know? What are we looking at over the course of this one?
Well, the one thing, and I think you're going to see this a lot early on, I don't anticipate that we'll see a lot of early yellow flags. The Road to Pro races past season kind of played out the same way. Long green flag runs. You even remember the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race. Early on was pretty tame, but if we get that midway yellow, that is when this race is really going to open up. Everybody's going to know what speed they have. If they're a little lacking on the long run, they're going to be more aggressive on the short run. So if we get to about lap 100, we see that yellow, that's where this race could really turn into chaos. I know anybody that remembers the Coca-Cola Series race from this past year knows the type of calamity that could take place here if things go awry here at Richmond.
Things have already gone awry, James, for a couple of drivers. We just talked about Zach Novak a minute ago, and this race is going to be one, I think, that is won largely off track position, because that will keep you out of some of the chaos in the midfield. Novak going to have a long way to haul. He spun in qualifying. Dylan Duvall spun in qualifying. Alan Bowes, who I think we thought is a favorite, and maybe it still is a favorite to transfer into the Coke Series, but he spun in qualifying as well. So 3 heavy hitters, big names, all going to have to come from deep in this starting field tonight.
On the flip side, there are some drivers who've not had the best of starts to this Pro Series campaign that are Pretty high up on the qualifying board as it stands. Donovan Strauss currently the fastest time. He comes into tonight deep in the point standings, way back in 36. Colin Keister is also on the outside looking in at this point. He's up there. In times, Jake Matheson is going to charge from the back of the point standings potentially to the front as you take a look at the top 20 on your screens. But this may be the opportunity that some of the drivers who haven't had the best of starts need to get their Pro Series campaigns back on track. And it's a completely different type of racetrack that we've seen the first 2 weeks. It's not a super speedway like Daytona. It's not a long 2.5 or 2 miler like Auto Club was. This is short track racing. It requires a completely different skill set. Maybe not a surprise that the folks we see at the front might be different compared to what we're used to.
That second page that you just saw from Vicente Salas all the way down to Jose Solis Jr., 21st to 40th are the drivers that need to make up some points, although Salas right now, because we are taking 21 this year, in largely Pike by the skin of his teeth. 6 points between he and Steven Wilson, who right now would be the first driver out of the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. But you look at this, there's some big names and some drivers who were in the Coke Series this past year that are not in as we get set to head to the starting lineup tonight.
Brian Show, Michael Garillia, Colin Keister Company, big-time names that are going to have to race their way hard over the next 4 weeks to try and get back into the Coke Series for 21.
But how about a driver Blake mentioned ultimately picking up his first career eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series pole position? Donovan Strauss on point, going to lead the field to green for the Horizon Racing team. He'll be joined on the front row by Colin Keister, Taylor Hurst, Femi Ola. In row number 2, Ashton Crowder with a great qualifying effort. Talked to him earlier today. He's optimistic if he can stay up front that he'll have a shot to make something happen tonight. Jake Matheson on the outside of row number 3. Starting 6th tonight, we mentioned Jose Solis Jr. He needs to make some points. He's up there in row 4. Nathan Lyon, and then on the inside of Nathan there in 9th, Mitchell DeYoung, the most recent series winner, starting 9th.
Danny Hansen going to roll off from the 11th position as you take a look at a few more of the drivers that we'll see in tonight's race. Derek Justice, Twitch streamer extraordinaire. Justin Bolton for Stuart Haas Esports, competitor in the Coke Series in those recent seasons. And Steven Wilson, who's not had a strong start to his Pro Series campaign after winning more races than anybody else in the Road to Pro campaign to get into the Pro Series. Maybe he might have something to say. Brian Mercurio and Ryan Touchette complete the top 20, Blake.
They do, and one name I'm looking at on this list, Garrett Maines, all the way back on the inside of road number 12. He was awfully strong here in Road to Pro and carried a victory all the way back at Martinsville a couple of months ago. Look for him to march through the field. Seth the Merchant, a teammate to Donovan Strauss, who qualified on pole all the way back here in the 31st position. So the Merchant going to have to do quite a job here to try and get up to the front of the field. And then a couple of surprises here in the back of the field. Eddie Kerner in 38th and Malik Ray, winner at Daytona. No qualifying time for him, as well as our in-race reporter Michael Griglia in 37th. But a big shocker there to see Ray, who's going to have to be shotgun on the field, work his way forward.
As we take a look at the weather conditions ahead of round number 3 of 6 for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series, 80 degrees on the temperature gauge, a very, very light breeze in sim. Track temp right along with the ambient temperature at 81 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of clouds, so this race is going to be largely a case where there is a decent amount of grip as the field rolls off under pacing. There you see Donovan Strauss and Colin Keister, 2 drivers, as we've mentioned, that need to make up some points. They will have 200 laps to try and get that job done as the field circulates, and we're just a few moments away from going green, so a lap away. James Pike, how big is track position? We talked about it a little bit, but realistically, how big is track position tonight?
I think especially on restarts and in the last 50 laps of this race, if you're going to try and work with some off-kilter strategy, you want to make that happen early, because I do think even if it means you're on old tires, you'll want to be in the front to avoid getting caught up in incidents. They're going to come when we get to the final quarter of this race. It took Cody Bias out of contention ultimately for a Coke Series spot a year ago. The hope would be that it doesn't happen to anyone tonight, but we can't rule that out, and I think better safe than sorry by sticking your nose up the front, even if you sit on 100-lap old tires, maybe.
Pace car's off. We're glad you're with us here on Podium Esports. Green flag goes in the air as they work off turn number 4, and a big jump for Donovan Strauss as they head off towards turn number 1. He gets the advantage by about 3 car lengths. They go side by side for second. Immediately, it's Taylor Hurst to the inside, Colin Keister to the outside as they work off turn 2 and down the back straightaway. So wheel to wheel for everybody but the man out front.
Donovan Strauss in really good shape already, maybe 2-3 car lengths ahead. Taylor Hurst with a good run on Colin Keister. He's another one that's buried deep in the Pro Series points coming into tonight and could use a good run. Ashton Crowder now leading the first 2x2 group. Was a little bit of contact for the back plate.
They're scattering around a couple of cars. Big damage on the nose of Eric J. Smith, who had some contact getting into turn 1 as he got in the back of Isaac Gann. A big stack up there on the inside line, and that's got some damage for Steven Wilson as they had to scatter around them. A couple of cars get tagged here early on.
The good news here is damage maybe not going to mean as much at Richmond as perhaps a place like an Auto Club or a Daytona where aerodynamics are so key. You get the speed shot there to really get a sense of how this is playing out. But out front, all clear for Donovan Strauss right now. Already open up car lengths over Taylor Hurst, who's taken second from Colin Keister.
So Hurst up to P2 and charging well. He's got a fast machine. He was a few thousandths quicker than your leader, Donovan Strauss, that last time by. Everybody else, though, in the top 10 already nose to tail, just trying to grind laps out. First side-by-side battle all the way back in 18th between Anthony Burrows and the 10-car Justin Bolton.
On the move, however, Mitchell DeYoung, who we talked about this at Auto Club before he went to victory lane, the driver of a 12, up to 7th right now early. We thought maybe a short track would be a struggle for him, Blake, but he is already proving the Temecula, California driver is that he can get the job done. He is hounding Jake Matheson for position.
And I don't think it's any shocker there to see Mitchell DeYoung, who's been so strong, at least in the Road to Pro campaign. You think about flat tracks and somebody who really takes well to the road courses. I think this is tailor-made for DeYoung. Even if he doesn't get the win, to have a nice, solid finish. You see there, he's stalking Matheson for that 6th position. But that VRS Chevrolet, I guarantee you, it's going to have some long-run speed in it as we continue to move forward.
And we mentioned, I'm a little surprised, James, that we've fallen single file as quickly as we have as we look off the back of Jake Matheson's number 52 car. So Matheson right now still holding down that 6th position, but largely this field has settled out in a way that I really didn't believe it was going to early on. I know we're only 7 laps in, but a lot of patience here as DeYoung to the inside of Matheson for the spot.
Was about to say that you say that, and then DeYoung goes to the inside of Matheson to take over the 6th position. So we know nothing in the booth, clearly, but one storyline worth tracking that's just come to our attention over the last few laps that Malik Ray got into his sim late, was only able to just get home from work in time to compete in his Pro Series race. So he's already 5 laps down, and that's going to change the way he runs this race significantly. It is about salvaging points tonight and hoping that you don't end up in trouble when other people do and potentially wreck out of this race. But it's already got him in a hole, and I wonder how that changes the way his entire Pro Series campaign looks, Jacob.
Blake McCandless, that's a case where if you're Malik Ray, you're honestly now hoping for chaos and hoping that you're not collected in the chaos. He's got to be, thinking, if we get a couple wrecks and get some guys out of this race to gain points, that, that for that's an opportunity. But yeah, for Benson Racing driver, the Rowdy.
Yeah, I would say for Malik Ray, that's a very tough position to be in. He just has obviously almost an insurmountable deficit to try to make up. 5 laps against this competitive of a field is just something that's not going to very easily be done. So when we talk about drops, it's a 6 race season. It's a sprint. This may have to go for Malik Ray. Now, he does have max points. He did get that all the way back at Daytona. He got 45 of those big ones to help him along, but I just don't see how this race is going to be chalked up as a drop for Malik Ray.
Again, it comes down to what happens over the next 188 laps or so. Right now, however, 12 laps in, working 13. Donovan Strauss, your leader, over Taylor Hurst and Colin Keister. And I'm looking a little deeper in the field at a guy who really needs some points, James Pike, and is trying to march his way forward, sitting back in 14th to 32. Stephen Wilson trying to get the total advantage train rolling.
Stephen Wilson, who was really solid here in the Road to Pro race back over the summer, trying to get the total advantage Toyota Supra up around Nathan Lyon in the 47, who himself has plenty of years of Coke Series experience and trying to find some way to get back to the rear bumper of Isaac Gann, who I think was one of the cars that picked up a little bit of damage in that incident over in 1 and 2 about 10 laps ago. But Wilson needs a good points night. I don't think we can stress that enough. Buried in 22nd, so not terribly far outside of the point standings, but Wilson was a person who I think a lot of people, Blake, looked at and said, this is a driver who not only has the ability to go toe-to-toe with the Coke Series drivers that will drop down to pro, but could well beat most, if not all, of them. That's how talented he looked in the Road to Pro Series, and it hasn't quite panned out as of yet, but again, still a lot of time in this race and in the 3 that remain to make up those points.
And I think you're exactly right, especially when you talk about Stephen Wilson. The biggest thing was his expertise in this car specifically, that I think a lot of people had him tabbed as a favorite, but we'll get back to that in a moment. A big development is Eric Smith. We mentioned that off the drop of the green flag, it was lap 2. There was a big checkup on the inside line. He got some damage. You can look at the damage on the nose of his Ford Mustang. He has had to come down pit road, perhaps running a little hot. It is 80 degrees out here, not too high of a track temperature, just 87, but 80 degrees ambient temperature. So obviously something where he felt like he had to come down pit road, cool down that race car, perhaps take some tape off or make some repairs. So Eric Smith, early on, he's in 38th, and he scored at the moment 1 lap down.
And that's another points hit that, for a guy who really could not afford a bad race. He had already had some less than desirable results, shall we say, going back to a week ago at Auto Club. He did not need another bad race here, and unfortunately now 19 laps in, he's going to have a big hole to climb out of, James Pike, if he's going to want to make something happen.
It'll bury Eric Smith a little bit, but I think if anyone, it's Malik Ray that may suffer more than anyone else, because Malik desperately needed everybody else to stay in the lead lap so that he could be in position for the lucky dog if we managed to get an early yellow. But now that's all Eric Smith's territory. If we get a yellow at this stage, the 9 car gets the free pass, and that almost certainly means that Malik is just racing to pass the people that fall out of this race. He may not be able to gain any positions now that the lucky dog is largely out of his picture.
Battle is brewing for the 8th position. You see it on your screen. Jose Solis Jr. has it. Derek Justice in the 31 trying to get to the back bumper and maybe take it away. We go on board with Solis, who looks back. He's running right where he started in the 8th position, the Nexus Esports driver. Solis trying to maintain and hopefully move a little bit forward. He's got about a second to climb if he wants to get to Fediola, and we get a chance to look on the right side of your screen at the points as they run. This only being a 6-race season, every point is absolutely critical. You see how tight it is right now around that cut line, and granted, that's without the drop that gets factored in, James, but it is still, single digits from 16th all the way back to 25th. It does not get much closer than that. Every point, every position, every moment of these 6 races matters.
You look at one driver who's right there in the mix of it, the 74 of Taylor Hurst, who's the very last man on that totem pole, and the one we ride on board with now, the lockdown racing driver out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, beginning to put the pressure on the 45 of Donovan Strauss. And last time by, he was faster by 4/100ths of a second, so Hurst beginning to turn it on as the screen flag run progresses.
Yeah, Taylor Hurst wants the lead, Blake McCandless. I don't think Donovan Strauss is very eager to give it up, but he may not have a choice in a minute. Hurst dives it deep into the corner, almost contact, and Strauss is going to have company. Hurst looking to the inside.
And it looks like Donovan Strauss going to go uncontested there for the top spot. So what a run for Taylor Hurst, who really ran into some luck here in qualifying, was experiencing some technical issues during the session, but was lucky enough to be able to load back in, got his time down, and obviously it was a good one. He rolled off from 3rd, and this is a driver, if you can remember, in the Road to Pro campaign all the way back in Martinsville, this driver led and dominated that entire race before Garrett Maines late the going was able to escape for the win. So Taylor Hurst, a short track extraordinaire, and he's putting that to the test here early on here. He takes the top spot here on lap 24.
That he does. So it's now Taylor Hurst leading Donovan Strauss, Colin Keister, Ashton Crowder doing a nice job in the 4th spot. The name that we really haven't mentioned yet tonight, but James Pike perhaps we should have well before now. The driver who won the E-Thanksgiving Classic in a last lap pass for the win on Sunday afternoon and showing off some of his short track prowess in Alex McCollum in the 1 car riding and actually closing in a little bit on Crowder for that 4th spot.
McCollum, a former Coke Series driver, I think is best known in the sim for his exploits, in particular in the super late model and the late model. He was also the pole sitter in one of the fastest cars in the fixed setup Snowball Derby back on Sunday night. So if there's a race where he's going to take advantage of the type of track that we're at and get some good points out of it, Richmond, hands down, has got to be the #1 track he was looking forward to on the Pro Series calendar. And in that sense, not a huge surprise that the 1 car is currently in the top 5.
Not at all. He rides just ahead of Mitchell DeYoung, who is about 1.2 seconds off the front 5, who have broken away just a little bit from 6th on back as we get a look at Mitchell DeYoung and the gap that he is trying to make up. And I don't think we can call him a road course specialist anymore, Blake. This is a driver who, these 3 weeks to open the Pro Series on the ovals, 3 very different ovals, he has proven he's been able to become adaptable and been able to be very versatile. And I think it was you that said it a week ago that the drivers who are locked into the Coca-Cola Series ought to be quaking in their boots. They better be, because this, to me, is a performance that cements Mitchell DeYoung, as long as he transfers in out of this Pro Series, as a championship, not just contender, in my mind, a favorite for 2021.
When you think about the way the schedule is set up this past year, you had a road course in the first round of the playoffs, and you got to think if that plays into DeYoung's favor, well, perhaps that's a Final Four spot. I know we're thinking well ahead of the curve here, but, that's what's on the line here for DeYoung, who's been so strong on any type of track. It hasn't been just the road courses, but we know that is his specialty. As you see, they continue to rocket along. The top 5 have really broken away here by about 1.5 seconds, but there's a pretty feisty battle going on behind Donovan Strauss for 2nd. You line them up, Strauss, Keister, Crowder, and McCollum all running nose to tail here. This is the battle for 2nd.
That's 4 cars under a blanket as we work lap number 33. Let's go ahead and take a look down the leaderboard right now, as we are not quite the quarter distance yet, but rapidly closing in on it. Taylor Hurst, your race leader, after racing forward from 3rd. Donovan Strauss riding in the 2 spot. From the pole, Colin Keister is 3rd. Ashton Crowder 4th, and Alex McCollum is 5th. Mitchell DeYoung in that 6th spot. Femi Olot rides 7th. Derek Justice now 8th. 9th to Isaac Gann. And James Pike, Jose Solis Jr. doing a solid job in 10th.
As Colin Keister and Ashton Crowder just got around Donovan Strauss to knock the 45 back to the 4th position. 11th is Vicente Salas. Denny Hansen holds 12th. Nathan Lyon 13th. Matt Musa 14th. And Stephen Wilson hanging around the top 15 in the 15th position. Garrett Maines doing a nice job charging through the field. 23rd to 16th. And he's joined by his Richmond Raceway Esports teammate Zach Novak. They are currently door-to-door for that 16th spot. Justin Bolton behind him in 18th. And then Ryan Doucette and Chris Overland to complete the top 20 plate.
And Michael Guest will ride along in 21st. He's marched up a couple of positions, as well as Colin Bowden. They're both up 8 spots. Dylan Duval currently rides in the 23rd position. Blade Witt is on the march as well in 24th. Brian Mercurio, he's fallen back a couple of spots. He rides in the 25th position. Brandon Cattell, involved in some controversy last week and has pretty much run where he started the race back in 26th. Brian Schoenberg runs in 27th. Seth DeMerchant, his teammate, qualified on pole, but right now DeMerchant's struggling back in the 28th position. Jake Matheson, as well as Anthony Burrows, I'm looking at here, Jacob. The Nexus cars are falling through the field. Jake Matheson started in 6th. He has already fallen back to 30th behind Santiago Tires.
I'm shocked, honestly, that Matheson has absolutely dropped anchor right now, and he's going to have to fight to keep that spot from Zach Nichols. Michael Gonzalez, 32nd. Anthony Burrows is 33rd. Alan Bowes, Eddie Kerner, 34th and 35th. Jarl Tyen, 36th. Michael Guerrilla, 37th. And then one or more laps down, Eric J. Smith, Malik Ray, 38th and 39th on the leaderboard as we complete 38 laps here at Richmond Raceway for round 3 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. If you're just joining us on Podium Esports, glad to have you. Jacob Seelman, James Pike, Blake McCandless with Ryan Bauer down in the production trailer, and we are working still a pretty furious battle for the number 2 spot. It was 4 cars under a blanket, now 2 cars under a blanket. James Pike, Colin Keister having to fend off a driver who I circled at the start of this race. He and a contender, Ashton Crowder, 3rd spot, needs a good night, and this is a driver who is really trying to fight his way forward for Elliott Sadler Esports to make something happen tonight. He was confident coming into this race.
I think coming into the Pro Series, he had a little bit more motivation just because he didn't get the chance to run the last 2 races of the Coach Series season. And it's not like he doesn't have talent. He won the Coach Series race at Auto Club Speedway back in February, so we know he can get the job done. I think that extra motivation has helped. I think we know how good he is behind the wheel of one of these cars in Sim. And I'm not surprised at all to see Crowder up there, because when you look at the talent level up and down this field as Colin Keister moves Eric Smith out of the way. But Crowder, I think, may have more natural talent than a good chunk of this field. And when he turns it on, there are few people that can compete with the 98.
Right now, there's nobody that can compete with Taylor Hurst. He leads by 1.5 seconds over Keister. Crowder is 3rd. Donovan Strauss back to 4th. Alex McCollum in the 5th spot. That is how they run after 42 of 200 laps. Blake McCandless in a race that so far has gone caution-free. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Well, and, I'm not entirely shocked. I was thinking that, of course, we know Richmond's a short track. We know that a lot can happen, but this is typically kind of par for the course for Richmond, at least early on in the event. Of course, there's a lot that can happen. Green flag pit stops here at Richmond tend to be an issue with how tight of an exit and how much speed you can try to carry onto the apron in turns 3 and 4. So we have a lot to look forward to in terms of that, and perhaps after that, if we get some short runs, this race will get pretty dicey. But otherwise, I think we're going to see a lot of this type of racing pretty strung out at the moment. And of course, these cars that came here with a lot of speed, they are really starting to shine. Hurst, Keister, Crowder being a couple of them, but as well as one pair of teammates that are just inside the top 10, Isaac Gann and Derek Justice, who have worked their way forward. And actually, it looks like Gann perhaps fell back a little bit, but Derek Justice doing a nice job. Kind of did the same thing at Auto Club, was running back in about the 8th position that entire race, and now his teammate Isaac Gann right along board with him right there in 10th as Justice crosses the line. He was pretty solid there at Auto Club, just maintaining his position.
James Pike looking ahead a little bit. We're 45 laps, working 46 laps into this 200-lap race. Should we be able to keep this string going and stay largely under the green flag, barring a string of cautions, would you and I agree on the fact that we're probably looking at just a one-stop race here?
You would think one, maybe if you are really trying to push it, a la Donovan Strauss, you might go for 2, but for the most part, this is a one-stop race because it's just really hard to make up ground unless you are absolutely 110% to the limit every single lap you run on a 2-stop strategy. So one stop, I think, for the most part here. The question is who can maintain tire life over a long green flag run. We're seeing Strauss struggle with that, while some other drivers like Keister, like Crowder, are continuing to climb the field. Looks like they may have slightly better long run cars than the 45.
And Ashton Crowder was the same way a week ago at Auto Club Speedway. Blake McCandless, he had very, very good pace over the long haul at that racetrack as well. Richmond, though, it's more than, less than half the distance of an Auto Club Speedway at only 3/4 of a mile compared to the 2-mile Auto Club Speedway. A lot of drivers I've talked to have told me this track chews up tires in a similar, saving a useful strategy.
It really does, and being able to, of course, here at Richmond, trail braking is the name of the game. It's probably why, personally, it's one of my favorite racetracks anywhere on the service, let alone just in NASCAR in general. I love this racetrack. I love the driving style, the finesse it takes, and particularly later in the run, you think about running down the front straightaway, having to manage those rear tires on the throttle. It's just something that makes this track so much fun. For those guys who are able to save their tires well in other places, Richmond is the place they pull up to, and they usually have a grin on their face. Ashton Crowder, obviously, as we were chronicling along there, doing an amazing job just being consistent and running up there in the top 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3. 3.
just sort of hanging out, I think, and waiting. We know that Hirsch has got the lead to the tune of about 1.5 seconds over Colin Keister, and then Crowder just waiting for Keister to slip up in the event that he might try and go a good second. And then Donovan Strauss, Alex McCallum, and Blake, how about Femi Ola, the 5 car, someone who was very quietly jumped to second in points entering tonight, and another really solid run for the 5 machine. Of all the drivers out of the Total Advantage stable, I think it was Stephen Wilson coming into the Pro Series that got the headlines, but if this holds, Femi Ola may be the pick of the bunch out of the TA camp. It's the most solid of the competitors, at least halfway through the Pro Series season. He's looked really, really consistent so far.
He has, and you can remember he finished up on the podium all the way back at Auto Club, and really just raced the same way into this series by consistently running in the top 5. We saw him in a lot of top split races back in the Road to Pro Series. He'll actually surrender Vicente Salas here, and he'll give up that 6th position. He'll be moved back to 7th, but Femi is just one of those drivers who you always know that he's going to come out here, give you everything he's got, but be very consistent with it. He may not be the loudest driver out there. He may not always be winning races, but Ola is going to be up there and be in contention. And in a series where your bad weeks, and particularly finishing 30th on back, those are the things that are going to hurt you. Being consistent, even being in the top 20 if you can, Jacob Seelman, that's going to be what will move you forward into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series in 2021.
And that's exactly what somebody like Derek Justice, we go on board with driver 31 right now. He has climbed from 13th to 8th, the North Sports Racing driver has. The Kentucky native who I think picked up some surprising strong runs during the Road to Pro, but is now proving in this Pro Series that it was no fluke. I mean, he's been consistent, he's been solid, he's had speed, James Pike, and he's, it's maybe not winning speed every week, but he's just been around. And if you're around in the top 10, that's more than enough in this series to do what you need to do and get you to the top level for 2021.
I look at Derek over the past year or two, and I feel like it's been a very long, drawn-out story of self-improvement. Derek so consistently vigilant on his iRating, always trying to go out and run official races to grind out a few more numbers, get a few more IR under his name, constantly trying to prove himself against the best of the best. And that's not to say it's been clean. He's had some small mistakes. He's had some big mistakes. There was the one big wreck last year in the Podium Esports Daytona 500 that was partially his doing along with Logan Clampett, but he's always owned up to those moments and trying to use them to make himself a better driver. And I think over time that's worked, and we're seeing the product of that in this Pro Series, where he's been really consistent and quiet, but in the top 20 coming into tonight, now having one of his best runs of the season so far, currently the 8th position.
Another driver having a really solid run. We were just on board with the 34 of Matt Busa, the Team Conti driver, who is trying to close in on Danny Hansen for a spot inside the top 12. You look on board for a moment with Matt Busa's view, and we just saw Garrett Maines ahead of those two in the 11th position, who is quietly creeping towards the top 10, looking for a spot on Mitchell DeYoung. As he goes to the inside, it's DeYoung, it's Gann, it's Garrett Maines, 3 cars under a blanket. That's the battle for 9th.
And the BRS Chevrolet starting to struggle a little bit as of late. A couple of laps ago, he lost the 8th position to Derek Justice, and now DeYoung looking to lose a couple of spots here as Garrett Maines has been on the march, 23rd, now looking for 9th, and it looks like he's going to be able to get it over Isaac Gann. And we know Maines, the short tracks is where he makes his money. Didn't start quite as far up as we mentioned in our pre-race coverage, but nevertheless, the Smithfield Toyota starting to make up some ground here. He is all the way up to 9th, and now looking in front of him at Derek Justice.
Yeah, Garrett Maines doing a very, very solid job. I have to say, he's been very methodical and very, very fast, James Pike. That's the winningest driver of all time on Podium Esports broadcast on the whole. Garrett has performed on this stage. He is looking to perform again tonight. He is trying to take another spot from Derek Justice. The battle for 8th. He looks to the inside, and Justice going to concede that spot. Maines absolutely flying through this field.
On Podium Broadcast, Maines is decorated. He's a former Podium Esports Truck Series champion, a Stock Car Challenge Series champion, the Truck Series champion of the Oval Class and the Oval Series last year. And even though he does race in a lot of other places, it seems like you turn on to twitch.tv/Podium Esports, and Maines puts his best performances here. And now on the biggest stage of them all, arguably, and trying to get a spot in the Coach Series for Richmond Raceway Esports Development, which is a very unique program, but I think when we're going to see more of these teams and more of these groups the Coach Series try and put together, because Richmond Raceway is not only invested in the main game team with Zach Novak and Jimmy Mullis, but Garrett is teammates with Raja Karut at Richmond Raceway Esports Development as they try and put together a proper fleet and a system of drivers that they may eventually be able to plug and play in the Coach Series if they wish, or maybe gain some spots outright the old school way if Maine's can finish top 20 in the Pro Series at the end of the season.
He's certainly trying to do that. Another team trying to build the old school way is the driver that we were just on board with in the 5, Femi Olot, the Total Advantage machine. And the team that Landon Huffman, Blake McCandless, has quietly but very skillfully put together and really brought to the forefront as a powerhouse. Femi Olot right now leading the way for that operation. He came in, you know, the top of the standings is right there. Total Advantage kind of has their grip, their hands around it at this point. And Femi Olot proving and hoping to continue that here tonight. 7th, maybe not flashy, but it's exactly what he needs to do. Maine's going to take that 7th spot away.
Well, he's faring a lot better than a lot of his teammates, and a bit of a surprise again. We obviously know Steven Wilson. He got just a little bit of damage on that scuffle at the beginning of the race. He's all the way back in 17th now. He's putting Eric J. Smith another lap down, but again, not typically what we're used to seeing out of the TA emblem. Eddie Kerner all the way back in 28th, a part of that group as well, so not quite as strong. However, a big development here. Mitchell DeYoung has come onto pit road here at lap 69. He brings his VRS Chevrolet down, and he may be the first of a couple that we start to see work their way onto pit road here in the next few laps.
How about James Pike? I'll explain this as follows. 2-stop strategy.
I was thinking the exact same thing, and DeYoung's just about evenly split it. It would be 70, 70, and then 60 laps to complete this race if we don't get any yellow flag stops. So clearly we see what DeYoung is up to. The question now is going to be, how does he perform against the drivers who go one stop, who we figure if we don't see any yellow flags between now and then, look for everyone to come down pit road around lap 100 or so. Though I'm seeing a few cars in this field. Derek Justice, I think most notably, starting to slide the rear tires pretty significantly, and I'm not necessarily convinced we're going to see everybody wait until lap 100 to come down. I have a hunch we may have a few drivers scream uncle early and get tires before the halfway point.
It's one of those things that we will keep our eyes on. 72 laps in. Taylor Hurst leading, but the gap to Colin Keister has closed. Keister now just 0.8 of a second back out in front, and one of those where I think as we get closer to the end of the run, we're finally, Blake McCandless, seeing the long runners come to the front.
Well, and the one thing I'm surprised about, Jacob, is we know that there's short-run cars out there. We know there's long-run cars out there. But just the advantage that the long-run cars have is absolutely insane. Thinking about how these guys are able to drive their way through the entire field. We've chronicled Garrett Baines. He's 23rd to 7th. Vicente Salas as well, 22nd, all the way up to 6th. So those drivers that have and hit the nail on the head in terms of the long run speed, they have certainly done their homework, because they don't just have a little advantage, they have a large advantage, and they are using it to their benefit right now as they are continuing to storm through this field.
Maines is sort of the bellwether along with Vicente Salas. Those two have come from 20th on back in the field when this race started to race their way into the top 10, and they're two of the fastest drivers on the racetrack right now. Maines is a full 10th quicker than everybody else ahead of him in the top 10, and Salas was a 10th quicker than some of the leaders. So those two in particular, I think we have to watch Blake McCandless, because if this goes green flag, it's not really all that much between them in the race lead. It's only 5 seconds from Salas to Taylor Hirsch, who continues to pace the field, and the Garrett Means is about 6 seconds back from James. So there's definitely time. If we go green flag all the way, they can absolutely make that up on the racetrack.
Well, and that's going to be the big if, right, is whether this strategy, whether this race is going to go completely green. Again, we saw at Auto Club Speedway, and not too much of a shocker that we ended up running an entire race under the green flag at a large racetrack like that. But obviously, you come out here to a 3/4 mile racetrack, it's not exactly what you expect to see. So, and we're not even up to the halfway point, so still a lot of racing left to happen. But I know those drivers, I think they got to be hoping for. When you have a fast race car, you want the race to play itself out and not have some cautions and some chaos inserted into it. So for sure, Garrett Maines, a couple of other drivers, I'm sure, wanting to see this thing play out. The one thing I will note, though, James, is the amount of drivers that are electing to do that two-stop strategy. They're very, very small in number. DeYoung obviously completed that. He is continuing. We've seen the onboard shots, the pace he's able to garner right now. He's making up about a second a lap on the race leader, Taylor Hirsch. So it's going to work out in his favor for the moment, but I'm just interested to see two-stop or one-stop and which one is going to cut it out, because I don't think DeYoung in particular and that entire organization for VRS, we see a lot of strategies played out, and we think, okay, well, they're just hoping for a caution. They're hoping this plays out. I have to think, James, that if they're doing something like this, they've timed it out, and they've thought, hey, we're going to make up time if we do a two-stopper.
If you're going two stops, I think you're hoping for the statistical minority green flag race for at least 75% of the going. We've not had a yellow flag yet, but that's the game plan here. I think that one-stop strategy is a little bit safer, a little bit more cautious, gives you room to work within the field, but there's only 3 drivers in this field that have elected to go on the three-stop strategy. You mentioned Mitchell DeYoung, who's joined on that strategy by Michael Guerrilla and Jake Matheson. They run 35th and 37th at the time, although they're all faster than the race leaders by anywhere from half a second to 3/4 of a second at this stage, like you said. 2 other drivers that I think are worth noting as we look through the field. Drivers who might not be nearly as high up on the field as a Salas or a Maines, but have made a similar kind of charge. How about Michael Guest and Zach Novak back in 15th and 16th position? These drivers, both competitors in the Coke Series in 2020. Zach Novak, of course, the champion of the Coke Series from 2019, and same sort of deal I think we're seeing with them that we're seeing with Salas and Maines, where it's just methodically picking off drivers one by one by one, using the experience that they have to know when to press the issue, when to hold back, and how to climb the ladder ever so slightly.
Doing so amongst an entire line. I mean, we'll bring up that shot once again. Look at this line of cars that is 9th on back. We've been green for 85 laps, and yet they are all running nose to tail. 8th until about 20th, until you get back to Christopher Overland. Do you see the just complete parity right there in speed? Everyone around that entire pack has just been so even this whole race. It's really interesting to see. Usually we'll see a couple setups that obviously are very good, some that kind of miss the mark, but I'm telling you what, this entire line of cars, if you're one of those cars that are thinking about a caution, this is most likely where it's going to come. I mean, this is a line of over 10 cars, and yet we are still 86 laps and counting into this run right now. So an incredible job by these drivers, and this just goes to show you how competitive this series is. That the difference between having a great run and gaining some points is the difference between about 1 second as we see a change for the race lead up front.
Colin Keister around Taylor Hirsch. And if you want to see a little bit more of the battle between Michael Guest and Zach Novak and everything happening in that backpack, you can pull up multitwitch.tv and punch in Podium Esports and then /Podium2, or go to the Podium 2 channel outright. More onboard cameras there and race audio. And if you remember when Hot Pass used to be on DirecTV back in the early 2000s, Zach Johnson came to us and said, I want to do that all over again. So you've got that as a viewing option as well if you want a little bit different look at what's happening in tonight's eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series event, where Colin Keister has taken the lead over from the 74 of Taylor Hurst. And Keister, who got the victory in the Coke Series at Charlotte back in May, trying to come off the front end of the 74 and is pretty consistently quicker than Hurst, who I think may have burned up his tires the same way Strauss did earlier, because all of a sudden here's Ashton Crowder on the rear bumper of the 74 looking for the runner-up spot.
I got to tell you what, the first through third fastest race cars on the track. First is Garrett Maines. Second is Vicente Salas. Third is Alex McCullum. Fourth was Ashton Crowder. So in succession almost, as if you had to lean back to save a little bit more. They are the fastest cars on the track. So this lead might be short-lived here for Colin Keister if Ashton Crowder can find a way around the JDR Graphics Lockdown Racing Chevrolet of Taylor Hurst. Crowder has been awfully smooth this entire race, but just looking for that opportunity to try to get around them.
And Crowder's just looks so stable, so consistent. And everybody in this top five, it's a running thread that I see as I look at each and every one of these cars. There's very little slip on the rear tires, on corner exit. Cars are very planted, very stable on corner entry. Looks like these drivers know how to save tires, but then again, it's a skill thing. And I think you look at the top 10, we know how much talent is in this series. It's not a surprise that some of the most, I think, almost natal talent types in here, the ones who just innately get how to drive these cars, make up a good chunk of the top 10 as it stands as we close in on the halfway point.
No doubt about it. We've seen a lot of drivers who are so strong, particularly at this Xfinity car. A bit of a different challenge from the truck to the Cup car that many of these eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series former drivers would have been accustomed to doing. This thing drives entirely different. We know the difference in horsepower. We know the difference in downforce. But the handling of these cars as a driver on iRacing is definitely something that is worth seeing as we ride on board here. A very tight battle has begun right behind Alex McCullum right here. Garrett Maines has caught all the way up to the back of him. And, of course, Vicente Salas, he goes by. He has been awfully quick, too. The Elliott Sadler Esports Toyota Supra all the way up to the fourth position.
Maybe not a surprise, then, that an Elliott Sadler Esports driver has the speed. Of course, Sadler, a native of Emporia, Virginia, which isn't terribly far away. You go south on the road and take I-95 down to I-85, and you'll come across Emporia, maybe about an hour and a half south of Richmond. So it probably could lean on Bossman a little bit to figure out how to get around this place, and Salas has done a really nice job of picking drivers off, as has the man just behind him, Garrett Maines, who is going to pass Alex McCollum to enter the top five for the first time this evening.
I tell you what, the favorites right now to win, if we continue to go on, again, mind you, this is nearly 100 laps into this green flag run, so a lot can change. Pit strategy, short runs could come into play, but if we have the long runs, if this stays green, I think Salas and Maines right now have to be your favorites to try and get it done. The speed they've carried through the field, mind you, these two drivers started 22nd and 23rd respectively. They are just absolutely mowing these guys down. I don't think it'll be very long if we see these guys make up some spots as we continue to see the strategy cycle out. If we're going to see one stop here, James, it's going to come here within the next couple of laps.
Have to believe we're not terribly far removed from it, as Blake Whitfield, Tyne, and Anthony Burroughs have come down just ahead of halfway, and I would expect momentarily we're going to see many cars hit pit road right around the halfway point, just to make things fun for our iRacing Midway race break. Colin Keister will come around turn 4, and as Richard DeYoung passes him with fresh tires on the outside. We reach lap 100. And the time is ever to go ahead and start our iRacing Midway race break, which of course is brought to you as always by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Colin Keister scored as your race leader with 100 laps complete of 200. Ashton Crowder runs in second. Garrett Maines 23rd to 3rd. Halfway through this race, Donovan Strauss holds the 4th spot. 5th belongs to Danny Hansen. Matt Bussa runs in 6th. 7th is where you'll find Ashton Crowder. Michael Guest is 8th. 9th is the 47 of Nathan Lyon. And Penny Ellott runs 10th as the leader Keister comes down pit road.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of green flag pit stops commencing right now, but we'll continue to run through this order as it's 6. Zach Novak in 11th. Stephen Wilson running in the 12th spot. Chris Overland is in 13th. 14th goes to Justin Bolton. 15th is Santiago Tires. 16th is Isaac Gann. 17th, Derek Justice. 18th running is Eddie Kerner. 19th to Brandon Cattell. And running in 20th is Brian Schoenberg.
Alan Bowes holds 21st at this time. 22nd belongs to Mitchell DeYoung. Zach Nichols is 23rd, and 24th belongs to Brian Mercurio. Michael Gabrielli is in the 25th position. He's the first car 1 lap down. Dylan Duvall holds 26th. 27th belongs to Dylan Duvall now as pit cycles come through. We change things. Duvall back to 28th as Mercurio drops back to 27th, 29th. Well, it's all over the place, naturally, right at the very end of things. So how about Derek Justice, Colin Bowden, Seth DeMerchant, Blade Witt, your top 30? Blake?
I think we can all agree on that. As again, we are continuing to work through a vicious cycle of green flag pit stops. The couple of drivers that have not elected to come down pit road, it looks like Nathan Lyon, Stephen Wilson, Matt Bussa, as he actually makes his way onto pit road right now. So Nathan Lyon and Stephen Wilson trying to play the long game here.
Officially, it's Jose Solis Jr., Santiago Tires, Michael Gonzalez, Anthony Burrows, Brian Mercurio now back to 35th. 36 is Eddie Kerner, Zach Nichols, and then Eric Smith and Malik Ray, 38th and 39th. So there's some semblance of a full field run down and a conclusion in some form to tonight's iRacing midway race break. There's over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from. iRacing is your portal to the racing world. You can get on track today at iRacing.com. And speaking of tracks, I don't know if anybody caught the promo video on Twitter earlier, but methinks that we're going to have a few flashbacks to NASCAR Racing 2003 season. Of course, the predecessor to iRacing, developed by Papyrus Games, from which most of the iRacing team and product is based off of. But one of the trio of fantasy tracks that was available in NR 2003, Coca-Cola Super Speedway. Gigantic 2.5-mile track, full oval shape like Martinsville, banking almost like Dover meets Daytona, blisteringly quick, a haven for speed, I think especially in the car on tomorrow machines that we saw compete in the Hard to Drive 300 a few weeks ago. Went McCandless and coming to iRacing in the very near future. There are going to be a lot of really fun races on that racetrack.
Oh, it certainly is. I can remember whether, even if you were a little bit younger like me around the time that sim was released, you know, there was always one track you could go to and just have fun. And I think this service, once that track is released and available, I think that's what you're going to see from everybody. Particularly hosted racing is going to just absolutely pop off with that racetrack. It's going to be a lot of fun and, again, carry a lot of speed over something that I know iRacing has put a lot of time and energy into to try to recreate that racetrack.
It's going to be really fun to see how it looks after about 20 years. We've seen graphics improve dramatically since NASCAR Racing 2003 season came out. So it'll be a little bit nicer, cleaner Coca-Cola Super Speedway, but the same Coca-Cola Super Speedway that you fell in love with if you were involved with the sim like we were almost 20 years ago. Hard to believe it's been that long, but we'll look forward to seeing when that track releases in the near future, along with some of the others that have been announced that are slated for future release. Hockenheimring in Germany, the streets of Long Beach, Hickory Motor Speedway, amongst the tracks that we will see on iRacing at some point in the future. But we'll find that out later after we take a look at where the race leader comes. But a yellow flag has come out for the first time tonight. And Michael Gonzalez, the 72 machine, up in the fence. Looks like contact, I believe, with Eric Smith over in turn 3. Right?
Yeah, and I believe that was just an incident there where Eric Smith, again, way off the pace, and I just don't think that Michael Gonzalez anticipated that he would be pinching him down below the yellow line right here. But you'll see Michael Gonzalez in the 72 obviously had come down onto pit road. We'll have to mention in a minute, this mainly benefits Brandon Cattell, who had stayed out on the racetrack. But you'll see right there, Eric Smith way off the pace. Gonzalez going to look low, and Smith is not really going to give him any room to make the corner, so that destroys both of those race cars. Again, Smith was running in the 38th position, 2 laps down, and unfortunately for Gonzalez, is going to pretty much put an end to his night.
Yeah, and a motor failure there on the Gonzalez machine, almost upside down in that incident, and not the way that he wanted to see his race come to an end, as we work lap number 112 now of 200, and things continuing to shuffle as we were kind of in the middle of a cycle of stops, James, and it's almost an awkward spot for a caution flag to come out here.
A really weird spot right at the end of a run of green flag pit stops, but it did benefit Cattell and DeYoung, McCollum, anybody who had either not come down pit road or had waited for a while to come down pit road for service, the ones that take advantage. And it's the drivers who had just come in for service, the Femi Olants, the Senta Merchants, the Michael Gaston Company. They're the ones who end up getting dinged here on strategy more than anybody else.
So it's going to be 87 laps to go next time by as everything gets shuffled up. Right now, Zach Novak showing as the race leader over Nathan Lyon, Mitchell DeYoung, Alex McCollum, and Brandon Cattell. The rest of the front 5 as it sits. And Blake McCandless, you and James both started to mention it. This benefits. It benefits certain people and hurts others.
Oh, you're certainly right. It definitely plays into the benefit of Brandon Cattell, who, again, was just waiting and hoping that a caution flag would come out. I would say it plays into the benefit of Mitchell DeYoung as well. He kind of flipped his track position back into the 3rd spot, and he was going to start falling a little bit if we continued to go on. So a nice job there for DeYoung as the strategy well played out. This is exactly what I was talking about. About a halfway yellow, and then everything ensues after that. We may very well be in store for that as the sun sets here.
That we may. This is one of those things that when I was talking with drivers about strategy earlier on in the days leading up to this race, that if we got a caution after halfway, there was the potential for, as Ashton Crowder put it, all hell to break loose, James Pike. And I won't say it for certain coming to 86 laps to go, but that may be what we're in for. And oh, by the way, the guy who I talked about needing to defend home turf, he's going to line up on the front row for this restart in Zach Novak.
With a little bit older tires than everyone else in the field, but not by much. It's only about an 8-lap difference, but there were 2 ways this race was going to play out. If we went green all the way, we would just sort of run through and run with it. But if we got 1 yellow, I think now we hit the point where we're going to see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 yellow here at Richmond in particular, in a way that I don't necessarily think is true characteristic of any other track in the sim. You end up with a lot more of them. You don't really get 2 or 3 here. You either get none or you get a lot.
That you do. We're about to find out what we're going to get as the pace car heads for pit road. Novak on the jump, a big jump as we come back to green, starting lap number 115. So 116 rather. So it'll be 85 laps to go as they work into 1 and 2. Mitchell DeYoung to the inside for the runner-up spot. He's coming after Novak down the back.
Oh, trouble here as one car shoved up out of the groove. A nice save here for Danny Hansen, who was running in about the 21st position. He's going to be drop kicked all the way back to the field, but they keep it green.
Keeping it green for the moment. I'm watching Brandon Cattell, who's worked his way up into the top 5 as we've got a battle for the race lead, and Mitchell DeYoung taking it with ease from Zach Novak. Those little bit fresher tires on the 12 paying off, James.
For all the years that we've wondered just how good is Mitchell DeYoung as a driver and what kind of skills does he possess in any car on any track, we are getting the answer here and now, because this is a very different track to our Grove Speedway that we were at last week, and all of a sudden the 12 machine is here ready to party at the front of the field. The question now is that now that we've had a yellow flag, does he try and go with the two-stop strategy that he was originally on, or does his strategy shuffle now that everybody's come down under the yellow flag, and can he stretch his tires the 80 laps or so that he needs to get to the end?
Oh, near contact there was a moment ago between Brandon Cattell and on the outside, Alex McCollum. They're battling for the 4th position. McCollum's stuck on the outside, waiting to canvas, and Cattell tried to muscle him up the racetrack. That's a battle as they cross the stripe, and neither one wanting to go quietly into the night.
No, they're not, and McCollum doing a very solid job making this middle work. Is now he may move ahead of Cattell for the moment, and now he has his eyes set on that 3rd position that Nathan Lyon was running in.
Yeah, that was a fake, though, and James, I thought maybe Cattell was thinking about 3 wide for a moment there. Thought better of it. The problem is it opens the door. Vicente Salas going to take advantage. Salas to the bottom. Cattell way up the racetrack, and here comes Colin Keister.
Cattell really did think about 3 wide for a moment. He almost stuck it in between Salas and McCollum and then had to back out of it and set himself up the racetrack. That's what allowed Keister to get underneath him. That's what allowed the 98 of Ashton Crowder to draw even with Cattell's 48 down the front stretch.
I have to say I'm impressed, though, because while Mitchell DeYoung got by Zach Novak, he has not gotten away from Zach Novak. Novak's still right there, a 1/10 of a second backplate McCandless. Top 4 under a blanket. DeYoung, Novak, Lyon, and McCollum.
Yeah, they've sorted things out here in about the top 5, but they are still battling out the field. Brandon Cattell trying to cut down here on Justin Bolden. It looks like he's going to get to the bottom of the track. Nearly gets into the back of Taylor Hurst, just a couple of inches off his back bumper as they work through. And now here comes Vicente Salas, who's looking to get around Nathan Lyon.
And further back in the field, another driver again for the 2nd race in a row, having a good run coming from deep in the field. The 77 of Ryan Doucette up to 15th. He's working on Michael Guest for position. We go on board with the driver from Massachusetts, and Ryan Doucette started mid-pack in 20th. He has finally started to claw his way forward a few positions.
Been waiting for Ryan Doucette to show his prowess. We know he could get it done. Won the top split of Road to Pro back at Rockingham, 2nd race of that season back in March. You figure that if Rockingham is any sort of indicator as to where you might be successful, Richmond's not necessarily entirely identical, but it certainly is more similar to Rockingham than a lot of the other tracks that we see on the circuit. So Doucette, you figure, probably has a little bit more left in the tank in that 77, especially so far as the talent goes, and figure maybe he's just waiting to make his charge in the second half of tonight's race.
Battle for 2nd is on. Driver that just made the charge is Alex McCollum. He shuffled Zach Novak up the racetrack. Novak falling back now. Vicente Salas to the inside. He'll take 3rd. Novak slots into 4th now. Novak coming back at the Toyota of Vicente Salas. They battle for position, but Novak's going to have a shot in the shorts from Colin Keister. The battle's on again in the top 5.
Well, the battle is on now for the race lead. Alex McCollum, who has made his car work anywhere, is trouble on the racetrack. A huge accident here on the front straightaway, and it looked like it was off the exit of turn number 4, and it's going to collect a couple of them. Steven Wilson is involved. Eddie Kerner, Chris Overland spinning off the exit of the corner. Caution flag is out. Jake Matheson gets tagged in that as well. I believe Santiago Tires went around. This is what we talked about. Cautions breed cautions, and yeah, that's exactly right. Cautions breed cautions. We see another one right there.
This all started on the back straightaway. Eddie Kerner, Chris Overland, and Santiago Tires were 3 wide down the back, and eventually it boiled over in 3 and 4. But Tires bounced off the fence on the exit of 2, got it to Overland, who got to Kerner. They careened off each other, and then Kerner made contact with the 46 of Colin Bowden, who was coming to the inside of the 19 machine. So they all start sliding through the middle of the racetrack up top, and then Chris Overland came back up onto the banking to try and catch it. It's Steven Wilson, who bounces back into Kerner, who then goes off the fence as Overland spins out. Santiago Tires with nowhere to go. Looks like a little bit of damage as well for Jake Matheson in the 52. But I think more importantly, this is a wreck that featured a handful of drivers who have not had good starts to their Pro Series campaigns and are not doing well in the point standings. This is not what they needed. Kerner in particular has been buried deep in the point standings after the first 2 weeks and definitely could have used a little bit more luck than that. And Steven Wilson too. We talked about how it's not gone great for him, and this is only going to add to his woes, Jacob.
That it is. Right now, 72 laps to go under caution. We're going to step aside. We'll be back with more Podium Esports coverage of Round 3 from Richmond Raceway of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series right after these words. Welcome back to coverage from Richmond Raceway of Round 3 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series on Podium Esports. Jacob Seelman joined by James Pike, Blake McCandless, with Ryan Bauer down in the production trailer, and pit stops have shuffled up the order with 2 tires. Garrett Maines right now is the race leader with 71 laps to go, getting set for a restart. James Pike, I'm not sure that I like this call, but if you're Garrett Maines in the Smithfield entry for Elliott Sadler Esports, you had to do something, right?
I don't necessarily know if he had to do something. He certainly had pace, but I think this comes back to the question that you asked earlier about track position. And what did I tell you then? I said, I want the track position, even if it's on old tires, instead of the fresh tires buried back at about 12, 13, 14, 15. So honestly, I like this because I think Blake's onto something when he talks about the likelihood of multiple cautions happening to spread out through maybe the final 70 laps or so. We could get green, white checkers as well. So at least final 70 laps in this race, maybe more. But my hunch is that we aren't going to see a green flag run like we did to start this thing off, that it's going to be caution, 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 caution. And Maines may be able to make these tires work for a long time if we get very short bursts of green flag racing. We've seen it before. Earlier this week, the big setup snowball derby, the virtual 5 flag speedway, the last 50 laps were all start and stop, marred by yellow flags about every 5 laps or so. So it's not impossible to think that Maines might be able to make this pay off, especially when you consider how fast he was to the back end of that green flag run. Nobody in this field was faster than the 2 cars. So if there's one car that can make 2 tires work, I think Maines might be the guy.
How big are these cautions, Blake McCandless, as we get set for a restart for somebody like Zach Novak, who's needed the track position, get a few heat cycles? Maybe he can stay up there.
Yeah, I think it works out for drivers like him. And I know we're a ways off from this, but there were 5 sets of Goodyear Eagles sitting on pit road. I know we weren't really going to talk about that as we went over the halfway point green, but that is something to say. Mitchell DeYoung has 2 sets left. Most of the field has 3.
So we'll see what happens here as we get set to come back to green. Oh, Maines waited until very late in the restart zone and finally got a 2-car length jump on Alex McCollum. They head back to 1 and 2. McCollum on the attack, and there it is a scramble behind them from 3rd on back.
They are 3 wide coming out of 2. Usually that doesn't work for all that long as Derek Justice got sent all the way to the apron back, and Femi Olak goes sideways over in turn 3 to bring out the yellow flag once more. But I saw that coming for about half a lap, Jacob. You can't go 3 wide at Richmond for maybe more than about a lap or 2 without someone getting turned somewhere, and Olak was the victim this time around.
Yeah, heavy rear end damage for the 5 of Femi Olak. We'll get a look at it on the replay here. James, you mentioned it. It started with 3 wide gone wrong, and unfortunately, when that happens in front of you, oftentimes it's collateral. In this case, it was a bump from Dylan Duval that sent Femi Olak around, and then you see everybody with nowhere to go.
I'm not necessarily convinced that it wasn't maybe Derek Justice who got into Duval, who then got into Femi Olak. I was looking for the big momentum, and even then, maybe Colin Bowden, because it looks like there was indeed some contact between Bowden and Justice. So this is Bowden who gets into Justice, who gets into Duval, who then gets into Olak. It's a 4-car chain reaction that ultimately sends the 5 around. And if you want a textbook example of just how close quarters racing can be at Richmond, Jacob, there's your textbook. Throw it in there, page like 135 or so.
Well, I was going to say, if I'm opening my textbook, or Blake McCandless, in this case, my dictionary, is that not what we would put right next to the definition of the words good old accordion effect?
I think you're exactly right. And, you know, I think that was just a reaction out of Derek Justice. He was blocking low. Again, everybody, the aggression level picks up here on these later restarts. And he saw in his mirror that Colin Bowden was trying to make a move to the inside. And I think it's just one of the classic cases. You're looking in your mirror when you should be hitting the brake pedal, and he just barely overshoots that. And, of course, there you see it. 31 at the back of the Smithfield machine to Femi Olak, and a couple others will get tagged in that as well. Brian Mercurio got some damage out of that. Blade Witt was involved. A couple other drivers. I think Anthony Burrows got tagged for a brief moment right there. So, yeah, that's it. You're exactly right, though. Accordion effect perfectly exemplified there by iRacing at Richmond.
65 laps to go, so we are just past 2/3 distance in this one now. You're getting another look at the live points. It is 3 races in as they run. This is without drops, but it does not get any tighter than a dead tie for the final lock-in spots. Right now, Eddie Kerner and Jake Matheson, the last 2 in. Eric J. Smith, the first driver out, 2 points below. Again, that doesn't factor, James, the drop that they get. It's 5 races of the 6 that are counted for points, but it is still very, very, very tight.
I don't think that's going to change all that much over the course of the final 3 races because we just don't have a lot of time for the field to separate itself. Over the course of a 20-race season, you know the battle pretty well in the Coach Series. And when you get down to the final race of the season, you have a good sense of the 4, 5, sometimes 6 drivers that are racing for top 20. Here, it's only 6 races, 5 of them count, so you're going to see the difference between making the Coach Series for 21 and missing out and having to go back to Road to Pro or to Road to Pro for 21. I would imagine for some drivers it may be no more than 5 or 6 points at the end of this.
So we work under caution now. 64 laps to go. Field going to start to double up and get ready for a restart. Garrett Maines, your leader. Alex McCollum going to line up second. Mitchell DeYoung and Zach Novak on row 2. I don't know that we've said Michael Guest's name at all tonight outside of the midway race break. He rides 5th now with Vicente Salas 6th, Keister, Crowder, Lyon, Busa, the rest of the top 10. And there is the Dead Zone Racing driver who also raced for Team Dillon Esports in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series this past year. Guest doing a nice job and picking up what would be a much-needed result for him if he can hang on to a top 5 spot. Pace car back to pit road. This time Maines goes early in the restart box, keeps everybody guessing. Back to green. He's got a 2-car length advantage as Mitchell DeYoung and Zach Novak, Guest thinking about 3 wide, but thinks better of it in turn 1.
The question is whether or not we'll see drivers go 3 wide a little bit further back, and this time I think they were wise enough to get down to at least 2 wide in spots. But Maine's now going to have to hold off Alex McCollum, who's got 4 fresh tires by comparison. And given how good McCollum is on short tracks plate mechanics, I wonder if that might be all he needs, because McCollum is lethal in a super late model. And this is a track that you can get around here in a late model, a super late model. It will translate very well to an Xfinity Series car like the ones they're driving tonight.
Indeed it will, and again, you got to think that Maine's on a little bit older left side tires than McCollum, so will he be able to pounce on it? That'll be the question, but Maine's has been so strong all night long. I think he's just confident enough in the setup in that car that even if he's not able to hold the race lead, that you give this car some time to really settle in, and regardless, it doesn't matter if he's going to be on the older tires, he is going to be able to keep it out front and hopefully out of the mess behind him.
60 laps to go. It'll be 59 laps to go as they cross the stripe. Maines and McCollum have broken away a little bit from Mitchell DeYoung back in that 3rd spot, and we talked about Ryan Doucette starting to climb a couple of restarts ago. He's now knocking on the door of a top 10 spot. He's back there with Ashton Crowder, Matt Busta on board with Doucette, who's chasing the 10th position.
Figured that Doucette would wait to make his charge until a little bit later, and that looks like it's exactly what the number 77 is doing. Just hanging out there with Vicente Salas and Matt Busa, drivers who really do know how to get around here. Salas in particular, we know how quick he was on the long green flag run earlier, and I figure if you're trying to learn how to get around here, there are few drivers better to follow than the 14 from Elliott Sadler Esports, which as a team as a whole has had a fantastic night on their home racetrack.
Change for the race lead. You just saw it on your screen. Alex McCollum had decided waiting no more. He's around Garrett Maines, and now driver number 1 leads driver number 2 in 1st and 2nd. And how about Michael Guest all of a sudden? The 33 to 3rd. So a little numerology going on at the front of this field. But Alex McCollum to the point inside of 57 laps to go. Blake McCandless, and that could be deadly for the rest of this field.
It could be, but even Guest, you'd imagine that he's been here a couple of times here, Jacob, and no shockers to see Michael Guest, who is able to make his way by Mitchell DeYoung and make his way up into the 3rd position. 28th on the grid is where Guest started out. I don't think he's had necessarily the speed, but guess what? We're not going to have an 80, 90 some odd lap run here. It's not going to be that long. I think Guest with this track position, he's in a good position to obviously come away with a very, very solid points day.
Indeed, 55 laps to go right now as it sits. It's McCollum, it's Maines, it's Guest. The front three positions, Ryan Doucette.
Straight away, one car is around on the apron. No caution yet. It's Alan Bose who has spun here. He's able to escape. Another car was jumping up through the grass. It was Dylan Duvall who was involved in something here. They got together. The six somehow got through it, but we still roll on green here. Somehow no caution flag for that.
And that's a driver in Bose right at the top of the standings. Got into Duvall, started sliding himself, gets a piece of the inside wall, slides to a stop. It was out of the racing groove. James Pike, which is bad news for Alan Bose because that is going to be the points hit that he did not want to have to give up.
He has the room coming into tonight to give it up, so it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. This would be his drop race as it stands, but it's certainly something that you don't want to have to worry about going into the final race at Homestead by any. Because the way the drop works, essentially what's going to happen is your worst finish is going to be the absolute worst it can get for you that night. So if your worst finish is, let's say, 25th, and you finish 35th or 36th that night, you know that you're going to take home 25th place points no matter what, because the 35th place finish will be dropped. But if you have a terrible finish deep in the field like Bose may well have, there goes your safety net, and you may end up really taking a huge hit in the points. So you've got the room to screw it up. That's the way the drop works, but it means that the margin of error for Bose is completely gone after tonight if his finish holds.
This is true, and he, unofficially on our live points graphic, drops from the top of the chart down to 8th in the unofficial standings as it goes. Now, that being said, 8th is still well inside the top 21 in order to transfer into the Coke Series, but it's not where Alan Bose wants to be. We're looking off the back of Ryan Doucette, who would be just ahead of Bose in the standings at Donovan Strauss, and Blake McCandless, another issue potentially on the 90 of Zach Novak. He's been battling some issues the last little bit, and he is a driver who definitely could ill afford a problematic race tonight.
Especially where he's running right now, solid and in the 6th position, and looking to have some race car to perhaps go up and battle up there in the top 5 with Mitchell DeYoung and Colin Keister. But you're exactly right, experiencing a couple of internet issues. He's still intact right now. We'll hope that he'll stay with us for the moment, because it would be a devastating blow to that Sunoco team if he were to have something that would put him out of this race.
How about a nice rally for a driver who's been around a lot of chaos the last couple of weeks, James Pike? Brandon Catel's just been hoping for a quiet race. I wouldn't say tonight's been all quiet for driver 48, but he's at least been able to rally and knock on the door of a top 15 finish. Did not start in the top half of the field, and by the way, flying a new sponsor on board that now blue and cream number 48, another homage to Jimmy Johnson, but kicking the tires on board that car for the duration of the Pro Series season.
Kicking the tires, of course, the media outlet. Jerry Jordan's team, I guess, coming in to support esports a little bit further. We've seen them involved across the board. I have the competitors in Monday Night Racing, Seth Eggert, their esports editor, most notably from that bunch, but not a huge surprise, but certainly a welcome addition to the Pro Series to see their coverage on board the 48. And this is a good run for Cattell, a win that he desperately needed. He came into tonight dead last in the point standings, so it won't be enough to put him back in the top 20, but you have to start somewhere, and a top 20 finish, if it holds, is at least a step in the right direction for the 48.
Meanwhile, some chaos up towards the front of the field. About 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. Mitchell DeYoung just got drop kicked to the outside. Colin Keister took advantage to move to 4th. Zach Novak slid up a spot. Nathan Lyon was there. Ashton Crowder is there. Matt Bruce is there. Vicente Salas is there. Mitchell DeYoung going backwards all of a sudden like the clothesline. Blake McCandless, he cannot find a lane on the bottom of the racetrack.
No, he can, and I think he's going to try to get in and finally find some relief here in front of Donovan Strauss as he finally gets down. And, I don't think that's a case where DeYoung is really that slow, but you just get trapped up in the middle. You can't afford to be there too long, although the VRS Chevrolet definitely ailing here late in the going. Donovan Strauss has a bit of a run on him. And in turn 1, as they nearly make contact, DeYoung will surrender at least the position for now.
Yeah, that was a muscle move on Donovan Strauss's part. He saw the gap. He went for it, and that's also a case, James, where the VRS number 12, I think, is getting very, very tight. It's not wanting to turn. It's to slide up the racetrack on quarter exit.
And the biggest question for me, given that he came down and got 4 fresh tires on that last yellow flag, is why are his tires going in a way that doesn't seem like the rest of the field's tires are wearing? That, to me, is the curious question, although we also saw him try and make the two-stop strategy, so maybe, just maybe, that might explain a little bit of it, that he may be pushing harder than anyone else, and his tires may be wearing faster as a result.
Big incident for Colin Keister as his engine went up in smoke. That was directly in front of Zach Novak. You could see him limping along there on the high side, seemingly out of nowhere. It was just running along. We had a little bit of damage on the nose of his Chevrolet Camaro, but you get another look at it as he was working down the back straightaway directly in front of Zach Novak. He's riding pretty here in the 4th position, and in a matter of moments, just poof, the engine went, and Colin Keister, he's going to give some damage to Novak. They're nowhere for the Sunoco car to go, and Keister had to get to the pit road, and that is going to be a huge blow to the former driver for Roush Fenway Racing.
That's a very unusual spot, too, in the middle of the straightaway, James Pike. Overheating it, perhaps, leading to that from damage, maybe?
Has to be. Absolutely has to be. There's about no other reason as to why an engine would go up in smoke. It's not even a place where you would even think about shifting either. So, yeah, to be fair, there are about 10, 15 cars that I've seen in this field that have nose damage to where they may be overheating, and it's now something that Novak has to watch out for. Never mind any of the suspension damage. Never mind how the handling on that 90 might be affected by the damage he just got, but engine temps are something he'll have to watch out for in the final 40 laps or so, and it might not be the finish that Zach Novak wanted.
No, I can almost guarantee it won't be. He's already fallen back to the 8th position. Novak has and may give up 9th to Donovan Strauss here in a moment. Meanwhile, looking out at the race leader, Alex McCollum, off the front end of Garrett Maines in the 2nd position. This is the battle for the race lead. Maines has tracked McCollum down. It's about 2 car lengths between the top 2. And in the last 5 laps, Blake, Garrett has really turned up the wick. He's almost on the back bumper. Toyota versus Ford for the race lead.
And I think this is where you're starting to see, you saw the tire advantage initially play out for Alex McCollum. Well, how about the long run speed that Smithfield Toyota has carried here to Richmond all night long, and it is showing up here right now late in the going. He's got plenty of time, 34 laps to go, but no doubt about it, Garrett Maines looking to be a potential race winning car right here if he can just find a weakness in Alex McCollum.
I don't know where the weakness is, James, but if he's going to find it, Maines is going to have to do it rather quickly. 34 laps to go, not a lot of time left to make something work, and he's right there. He's got the shot. Could he move him if it comes down to it?
He can move him, but there's enough time here, and the distance is so little. I think that the way Maines has been able to save tires, I think we're seeing it pretty clearly now. There is not a better car in this field on the long run than that 2 machine. All I think Maines has to do is just put pressure on McCollum, force him to make a mistake, force him to overdrive, and force him to use up his tires, and eventually, I believe the hole will be there for Maines if we continue to stay under the green flag.
Well, there's traffic too, Blake McCandless, and that could play a major factor in this down the stretch.
Oh, it certainly can. We saw earlier Eric Smith kind of playing things out with Michael Gonzalez, but now as Maines is all over Alex McCollum looking for the race lead, they both have Alan Bowes as well as Eric Smith within a couple of car lengths, so they'll have to navigate safely through this traffic, but perhaps Maines can use Smith as a pick. We'll have to see. Maines looks awfully sporty. He's going to look for the race lead into turn 1.
Here comes Garrett Maines. He wants that first Pro Series win. He's to the inside. They race door to door as they exit the corner and head down the back straightaway. Garrett Maines looking for the race lead on Alex McCollum. The lap car ahead, it's Eric J. Smith, and I think McCollum's going to see the spot, fall back in line. Can he try the crossover off turn 4?
That was a beautiful crossover. They're going to come to the inside of Eric Smith and be 3 wide with the lap machine going through 1 and 2 as Maines now runs up high. McCollum on the inside, but the 1 car got ever so slightly loose off of turn 2. New leader in the 2 machine for Elliott Sadler Esports and Richmond Raceway Esports Development. It's Garrett Maines, the Smithfield Toyota.
And you know,
big
the
fella here, Zach Novak is off the pace, and it looks like perhaps the engine expired on his Sunoco Toyota as well. He had damage from Colin Keister, and there you see, up in a heap of smoke, it blew all at once, and because of the damage, Zach Novak, another driver falling victim to a blown engine.
So Zach Novak falls by the wayside, 28 laps to go. That is going to shuffle up the standings even more as Garrett Maines starts to pull away now from Alex McCollum. 3/10 make it 4 as they work down the back straight away, and the driver who is starting to love this as he closes in on second is Michael Guest.
This is all Garrett Maines if it stays green flag, I think. But Guest has got a challenge of his own, as do the drivers directly behind him. Nathan Lyon, Ashton Crowder, Matt Busa, and Vicente Salas. They've all got to find their way around the 9 machine of Eric Smith, who has developed a reputation as one of the hardest drivers to pass. If you think of a Ryan Newman-esque character in sim racing, it's Eric Smith. So everybody's going to have to put a little bit extra effort in to try and figure out where's the 9 going to go and how do you get around him best.
Indeed it is. We're coming to 25 laps to go. Blake McCandless in the battle may be about to be on for third place. Nathan Lyon all over the back of Michael Guest for position. Couldn't quite get to the bump. Oh, Guest got the wall off turn 2. And here comes Nathan Lyon.
All he needed was a mistake out of Michael Guest, and he certainly got one there. Lyon to the bottom of the racetrack. Looks to have him clear off of turn 4 to move Lyon up onto the podium. Michael Guest going to have to surrender there to Ashton Crowder as well. So Guest in the blink of an eye from 3rd to 5th.
And that was one small mistake. That's all it takes. He just slid a little bit wide, James, off turn 2, tagged that outside wall. And when you lose momentum at this racetrack, it is a disaster.
And even if it isn't necessarily as pronounced, because these Xfinity Series cars are more horsepower driven, the principle still remains. And ultimately, that's what allowed Ashton Crowder to get to P4. All of a sudden, Nathan Lyon's got to worry about company here. If you look at some of the names up here, outside of Maines and McCollum, Coke Series driver, Coke Series driver, Coke Series driver there in the back half of the top 5 up to 6th. And then Vicente Salas, who's the teammate to Garrett Maines at Elliott Sadler Esports, and 2 also have a really fast, long-run race car.
Well, stop and consider. You talk about Elliott Sadler Esports. That's 3 of top 6 right now in Garrett Maines, Crowder, and Salas, James. You know, they've really, they said coming into tonight that they thought they were going to have speed, and they're really backing that up. 1st, 4th, and 6th for ESE.
I'd like to think, with all the knowledge that the namesake Elliott Sadler has of this racetrack, that they would do well. And for all the speed that Total Advantage had last week, it's been an even better performance by Elliott Sadler Esports tonight.
That it has. So 20 laps to go next time by, and here comes Nathan Lyon trying to come back at Ashton Crowder. Crowder says no, so move Crowder to the 3rd spot now behind just Maines and McCollum. I don't know that Crowder has quite the same speed as his teammate Blake, but he's certainly trying to give ESE a 1-2 finish here.
Oh, he certainly is, and I think the one thing you have to worry about is time here with 20 laps to go. I just don't know if there's enough time left for Ashton Crowder to try and run back down that pair up there, as well as Vicente Salas, who runs back here in the 4th position. Crowder and Salas, though, both faster than our race leader that last time, so is there, like we said, enough time for them to run them down? That's what we'll have to see, as Maines was slowed up a little bit there, had to get around some lap traffic. That was Alan Bose that he had to pass, but he's got more in front of him that he'll have to deal with here as we work 19 to go.
Inside now, 18 laps to go as you get a look at the live points and how tight it is once again. Oh, James Pike, how about a 3-way tie, 20th through 22nd, when you have to go to the tiebreaker to determine who transfers and who doesn't after 3 races? You are doing something right.
It's going to be pretty similar as one of those. Eddie Kerner is slow on the front straightaway, and I wonder if Kerner may just call it an evening here. He's 22 laps down, not too much to gain. If he stays out, he'd probably pass that Novak, but he won't finish any better than 35th, which is not the kind of night that Kerner needed. So big trouble for the 19 machine. And yeah, going to be fun to see how it plays out from our perspective. But if you're any of the drivers near the Buffalo, Jacob, it's a very nerve-wracking next 3 weeks you're going to have to fight through.
One car on pit road, it's Donovan Strauss, who was off the pace. Perhaps another casualty here under the hood as Donovan Strauss is on pit road, and it doesn't appear that he's going to be able to get back onto the racetrack. Nose damage here has been lethal to several cars, and unfortunately Donovan Strauss with that as well sat on the pole, and right now 2 laps down. Looks like it's going to be a 34th place finish for the youngster.
And meanwhile, a change for the runner-up spot. Ashton Crowder has gotten by Alex McCollum. Crowder now to second. He is a second and a half behind his teammate. He has been a little bit faster than Garrett Maines the last couple laps, James Pike, but I don't know if Ashton has enough time left to be able to make it happen.
1/10 was the difference that last time by, and he's got about 13 laps now to make it happen. So Crowder's got to get 1/10 every single lap just to get to Garrett Maines, and then he has to pass him, and that could be another matter altogether.
There is a bumper on the front of that car for a reason. We'll see, though, if he gets a chance to use it. It's 1.3 seconds with 13 laps to go. So Crowder has turned up the jets. He has hit the button. It is go time for that 98. At the very least, it's a 1-2 finish for Elliott Sadler Esports, but Crowder wants more. Meanwhile, coming to 12 to go, it's the Virginia young gun, Garrett Maines, who continues to show the way.
Maines still doing an awfully strong job there up at the front of the field, but does he have enough to hang on? Once again, Ashton Crowder cuts into the lead for Garrett Maines by just about 5/100ths of a second that last time by, but at that pace, Maines is in a position that he may be able to hang on here without a yellow flag being displayed. So 11 laps to go. Maines still sports about 10 car lengths over Ashton Crowder, who again barely runs him down.
He's trying. Again, James, I don't think he's going to have enough time, but it is a very valiant effort for a driver who is on a bit of a redemption quest to make sure he gets back in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for 2021. A performance like tonight going to go a long way into making that happen.
It will certainly help Ashton Crowder, but Garrett Maines, if he can keep this together for the next 10 laps, how big is this to get your first Pro Series win at the racetrack, maybe no more than 20 minutes from your doorstep where you grew up? This would be so big for Garrett Maines if he could hang on.
And we talked about it all night. Like we thought Zach side 10-minute drive.
Apologize for some of the issues there, but nevertheless, we'll look forward here. About 8 laps to go and still trying to find a way through here, James.
As Maines continues to pace this group, the difference in lap times has stayed steady. It's been about a 10th consistently between the 2 and the 98. The problem is that Crowder's running out of time. Down to 8 laps to go, and Crowder struggling to make anything happen.
Well, he's struggling, but that last time by, that about couple hundredths or so, it was nearly a 10th that Ashton Crowder was able to make up over Garrett Maines that time. And of course, Maines does have Santiago Tires in front of him. They'll work it 6 laps to go this time, and Crowder is still running him down.
It was only 4/100ths of a second, though, and still a second with 6 laps to go. It's got to be 2/10 of a second for the 98 to try and get even with the 2 to have a chance at this.
Hey, you're exactly right, James. It's going to have to take a lot bigger of a gain than that. Perhaps a mistake out of Garrett Maines to try and salvage something here for Ashton Crowder. Solid point stay nonetheless, but again, Crowder a 10th of a second bitten in from Garrett Maines, but only 5 laps remain.
Another 10th there. Another 10th, Jacob, but it's still not enough.
It's not enough yet. We're coming to 4 laps to go this time. Crowder doing everything in his power. Nathan Lyon, 2.5 seconds back. The lap traffic is what is hurting Garrett Maines here and giving Crowder a chance.
Should be, Blake, but yeah, it's going to be tight.
Yeah, it is, and we'll see right here. This is perhaps the biggest obstacle for Garrett Maines, and it looks like he's not going to have to worry about it. He gets very quickly around Santiago Tires. They'll work it around this time. 3 laps to go. Maines still out front.
Garrett Maines trying to make it happen, James. He's about 2.2 miles away from victory lane. If Crowder's got anything left, it's right now. He's got to show it.
It's got to be a full send, but I just don't know if it's going to be there. And the storylines are going to be all about Garrett Maines, who could not script this any better if he tried, or if Richmond Raceway Esports could try, or if Elliott Sadler Esports could try. This is the dream scenario for them tonight.
That it is, and it is now a lap and a half away from being realized. You see the sunset there down the back straightaway for penultimate time. He'll come around. He'll see the white flag in the air this time by 1 lap remains for the driver of the Smithfield Toyota Supra as Garrett Maines starts the final lap. And at the start of this broadcast, we all thought it was going to be Zach Dovak for Richmond Raceway Esports, who defended home turf. It is not tonight. It is the driver from Richmond Raceway Esports Development Program, Garrett Maines, who gets his first career eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series win at his home track. He wins Richmond Raceway and gets the job done. Max points for driver number 2 in what I'm sure will be an emotional victory lane celebration. James Pike, how about that?
This has got to be special. This is special. It's not every day that you see big-time moments in the Pro Series, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this victory is going to carry a significantly greater amount of weight to Garrett Maines than it would to just about anybody else in this field. It is his team. It is his home. It is everything to the 2-car, and for all the work that he's done in the past years, a lot like Derek Justice that we talked about, as you see all of Elliott Sadler Esports burn it down on the front straightaway. But for all the work he's done to improve his ability in the sim over the past few years, this is a tremendous bookmark and proof of how far Garrett Maines has come.
How about that? Twin burnouts. It's a 1-2 finish for Elliott Sadler Esports. It's the team's first win. It's Garrett Maines' first win. It's a win for Richmond Raceway Esports at the track that gives them their name. This whole night, Blake McCandless, is all about firsts, and none more special than that driver right there. Garrett Maines, the winningest driver in the history of Podium Esports, gets another.
He does, and if you can remember, it was just a couple of months ago at the short track at Martinsville where he finally staked his claim as a winner in the Road to Pro Series and finally gets it done here in the Pro Series. Had a very, very solid run last week, and this is, again, in a quick season, momentum can be huge, and for Garrett Maines, he's got it all right now on home turf and in victory lane.
And he continues the celebration. It is well worth the celebration as well for the driver of the Smithfield Toyota Supra, a night he will not soon forget. And boy, he's excited. We're not even going to get a chance to run down the order because he is already joining us to chat. Garrett, I've known you for a long time. I imagine this is going to be one of the coolest moments that you've had, real or virtual. How special is this moment?
Dude, this could not have come on a better night. I'm in disbelief. The expectation is always, to try to finish in the top half of the field and just, squeak into pro and, show what you got when you get to the Coke Series. But man, for us to win on the 75th anniversary of Richmond Raceway, just, man, that's absolutely perfect. It's really cool, and a huge thank you to everybody at Elliott Sadler Esports, Ashton Crowder, Brendan Kohler, Liam Brotherton, Michael Jeans, Vicente Salas, Alexander Russell, Dave Siltman. Huge thank you to Elliott Sadler as well for all of his support, and Seth Ryder, and man, the list goes on. I hope I didn't forget anybody, but man, the amount of work that goes into this to be able to, and if I didn't say Michael Jeans, definitely Michael Jeans, just big thank you to him. He's been on the box with me for 3 years, and he's kept me calm through it all, and he's been here to see it. So it's been really cool, and just like I said, the amount of work that goes into this is just to see it finally pay off. And Yeah, everybody just helped us down the road. Even Blake Cisneros, he wasn't here this week, but I mean, we wouldn't have made it into pro without him. So just this is amazing.
Talk me through the move for the lead and then holding it down the stretch. It looked probably more effortless than I'm sure it was. Did you realize that Crowder was closing on you in those last few laps, or was that a case of just pacing yourself and knowing that you had the gap to burn, so to speak?
Well, when that restart happened and I went down into turn 1, it got a little loose, but when that caution came out, I was like, man, we're sitting pretty, because I mean, I'm gonna get the tires off. It was pretty close to where I wanted it. And we went down in the corner of the second run, and I'm like, oh, we're good here. Especially if it went green. We would have probably been 1, 2, 3 as a team had it gone green the first time. But I was really confident there when it went green the second time, and I just knew, Alex fell off really bad on the first run, so if I was able to hang with him on 2 tires, I knew I was going to catch him eventually, and just kind of pace myself. I saw Ashton catching me. It was about 28 to go. I told my spotter, I'm like, yeah, I see him. I'm going to stop hitting the apron now, because I'd kind of gotten like so complacent with where I was that I wasn't really looking around. And then I'm like, that gap was 2.9 like 10 laps ago. Let me pick up the pace a little bit. But it was so cool. For our team to finish 1, 2, 4 just shows, the amount of effort that went into this car. It really paid off.
It pays off for you. It pays off in the points unofficially at the halfway point of this season. Not factoring in the drop, but you're sitting second in total points accumulated over 3 races, and you've put yourself in as good a position so far as I think you can to take that step up to the very top level after 3 more of these things.
Yeah, definitely where I needed to be tonight. We came in with the mindset of top 10 as always, and we got far more than that. I think we got max points tonight, and to be able to do that, that puts us, I think we need a top 25, and we're in. And not saying that's easy to do. It's never easy to make a single position in the series, but I feel pretty confident everybody, with the momentum that we have and the amount of work that goes into these cars. We're not going to stop. We still got, Vicente's got a few more points after his, mishap at Daytona, and, because of that luck and all that, we still have plenty to drive for. Not that we'd want to slow down anyway. Now it's time to go win races, but just to be in this position is really cool.
I know you gave so many of the thank yous already. Any additional shout outs, Garrett, for you and this 2 crew?
Yeah, for sure. Got to thank Smithfield for sponsoring me this year, and hopefully for years to come. To get a win at this level already is more than I ever expected. So really cool to have them on board for that. And 101 CBD, SimSeat, Strickland Hardy, Lennox, Bradley Mechanical, guys at Richmond Raceway Esports for all their support. And can't forget another shout out to Elliott Sadler Esports, just everybody over there. Big thank you to them.
That's Garrett Maines, who comes home with his first eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series victory, and just a little ways down pit road, James Pike, tonight's runner-up, who I said it was a redemption trip. It's not a victory, but a very, very, very strong night for Ashton Crowder.
Ashton Crowder with his best finish of the Pro Series so far this season. P2 tonight at Richmond Raceway. And Ashton, it seemed like your car really came to life about lap 75, 80 or so. That's when we started seeing you make your way through the field on a long green flag run. But given how strong ESC was tonight, seems like everybody in the team had really good long run speed.
Yeah, somebody grenaded beside me. It was Vicente. Anyways, we worked really hard on that all week. We kind of knew that, well, I don't want to say we knew, but we had a feeling that we were going to get some sort of green flag run. You usually do on the first half of these Richmond races. You get like a really weird long green flag run in the beginning, and then it all goes to crap from there. Thankfully, it really didn't this time, but yeah, we just focused on long run all week, and sure enough, it worked out. You can't do anything for the first 10 laps anyways. You're just basically planted behind people and just hope you don't, scrap your tires or mess up. But yeah, that was easily the best Richmond car I've ever had, and I think it's just a testament to everybody at ESC and the work we've been putting in, and yeah, just showing, thankfully. Really happy for that.
1, 2, and 4 for ESC. For those keeping score at home, and Ashton, now you too going to be close to the top 5 in points. Not quite sure officially where you land, but you came into tonight 7th, so you come away with another good finish, confidence going into Dover next week, and for everything that went crazy in the second half of the Coke Series for you, I have to believe you're loving this and loving the opportunity to just show what kind of talent you can showcase week in and week out.
Yeah, firstly going into Dover, I really hate to say it, but every track that we go to except Charlotte on the schedule, I either just despise it or just not very good at. It's just, for some reasons, like the tracks got picked. Like even Auto Club, I was telling everybody I hate that place, and we've just been fortunate enough to have 2 really good race cars there. But yeah, from everything that happened this year, it's still really, I guess, touchy for me to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that I guess people don't know about it. A lot of assumptions were made, and it's really put me in a very bad place, mentally, I guess physically as well. It's hard to keep your mind on straight when it feels like the world's against you. That's kind of how this year has gone so far, and just praying basically the whole half of the year that they would allow me to run pro and do something in here. And then it's the anxiety of like I haven't raced anybody like really competitive in 3-4 months. Like, am I going to be able to do it? That was my biggest worry at Auto Club, actually. And I lost like 3 spots and I was freaking out. I was like, dude, I'm done. Like, this is it. Then we came back and finished well there. I forget exactly where I finished. It was probably like 8th or so. But yeah, I'm just over the moon with how everything is going right now. And just, going to try to carry that over to Dover. I'm really bad there. I always burn off my right front. So it's going to be a pretty long race there. It's kind of the same here, actually. I'm not that great here with the right front. So just going to have to do what I did tonight and just try to stay out of trouble and hopefully be one of the people that's finished all the laps at the end of the season. That was the goal coming in, and knock on wood, we've done that so far.
Something along the lines of people not being able to forget riding a bike when you get back in here in the skill set. Sort of the same thing, I would think. But Ashton Crowder with a really solid runner-up finish tonight. Thanks for the time, Ashton, and congratulations on your P2 finish.
Can I thank some people real quick?
Go for it, yeah.
All right, thank you, man. For one, everybody on ESC, especially Elliot, for giving me a shot on his team. With everything happening this year, that felt like a long shot that any of this would even be put together. But I'm so thankful that it has, and that we're able to showcase. I guess not show off. Man, that was a poor choice of words, but showcase what we can really do as a team. Garrett, Vicente, and myself, and Dave, Kohler, Liam, everybody on the team that puts in so much work. Just they're the big ones. But my grandparents watching, my mom watching. I don't know actually if my dad is watching, but kind of got back together with him after I'd say about 15 years the other week, and that's really meant a lot to me. Yeah, everybody at iRacing for allowing me to do this, and especially Garrett for getting the win. And Vicente too. Like, they put in so much effort, and Garrett has a really rough time with people kind of calling him out over just stuff that shouldn't be called out for. And he keeps his head on straight, and he just, puts his head down and straight hand down, and just powers through it, and just got so much respect to him. And as always, my mentor, Justin Bieber, he's got an album coming out soon, so really looking forward to that.
We knew that the night was going to be significant for Garrett Maines, but arguably an equally significant night for Ashton Crowder, who comes home P2 this evening. P3 for Dead Zone Racing was Nathan Lyon in the 47 car, and he is with Blake McCandless.
Nathan, a great effort put up here. Started in about the top 10, and after that caution, it seems like you were able to get that track position, and you just never looked back. That Splash and Go Chevrolet was hooked up.
Yeah, it was pretty good. once I was able to put some adjustments to try and help center out, it seemed to take off a lot better. And then it still tightened up a little bit too much, but overall it was a very good car, definitely top 5 worthy.
Well, certainly so. It ends up third tonight here, but again, just kind of talk about this is such a short season. I don't think people out there understand quite the pressure that you drivers are under to obviously come out and perform well. These great performances, they help you so much. Just kind of talk about that, because I feel like we've just kind of looked left and looked right and looked back forward, and all of a sudden we are 3 weeks and over halfway through this Pro Series season.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's gonna change in the next 3 weeks for sure. Each race is just so important. You have to keep clicking off top 10s in order to make it and to be safe, because I saw a lot of guys today, they blew up because of how much tape everyone's running with these B cars, and really anything can happen in these races. So it's very important to just try and stay out of trouble and click off top 10s and top 5s. As much as you want to win, you just need to finish.
Certainly so, but we've mentioned a couple of different track types. We obviously went to Auto Club. We go to the short track here of the schedule, but Dover is where you're looking next. How are you thinking about that race, and if Dover is a good fit for your skill set?
Yeah, the next 3 tracks are pretty good for me. Dover's good. We're running pretty fast for how grippy the tire is, so that doesn't really suit me as well. These tighter sets and tighter package, I like something that's more free and has turn, but I can still run top 10, so we'll see what we can get at Dover. Charlotte, I ran really well there last year and the year before that, so I'm looking for another good run. And of course, Homestead, I've won a few times, so I'd like to try and get another win here out of these next 3 races. But of course, the ultimate goal is just to get some top 10s and make it back in the series.
All right, Nathan. Well, I'll throw you the mic one more time. No, it's a big effort to be up here and finish up in third. I know that's a big relief, but go ahead and throw you the mic. It's all yours.
Big thanks to everyone at Dead Zone, Houston and Dustin, Jared, everyone that helps out the setup every single week, all my teammates that help out. Of course, Splash and Grow Graphics for the awesome paint, man. Cosman has been doing some wonders this year for me in the paint booth, so I was finally able to get in that interview, and I was really happy about that. And of course, you guys for doing the broadcast. That's really awesome, you guys being able to do that for the Pro Series.
It has been fun for us. I hope it'll be fun for you the rest of the way. Nathan, thanks for talking to us, and hopefully we'll see you back here soon.
Thanks.
It's Nathan Lyon who brings it home third, but to complete this trio of just wonderful runs out of Elliott Sadler Esports, we turn it over to Jacob Seelman, who is caught up with Vicente Salas. He brings it home in fourth.
We had to get the third Elliott Sadler Esports driver in. It's not quite a podium sweep, but Vicente, after a week at Auto Club Speedway where you were able to get the pole and then things did not go according to plan, I have to believe the top 5 finish, rallying late, and the performance that you guys put on as an organization, there has to be a lot of pride in this tonight, isn't there?
Yeah, it feels incredible. You know, all the work that went into this week, the countless testing, the countless hours, the countless studying, you know, it's, I mean, nothing but kind of just a relief, you know?
I imagine it was. Talk us through the second half of that race from your perspective, and it looked like your car really, much like Crowder's, came on strong at the very end of this race over that last long run.
Yeah, we started P22, kind of messed up on the quali run, but we knew we had a good car and could drive through the field. Kind of worked our way through there. Second half of the race was just looking to make up spots. I think we put ourselves in a really good position behind Alex right before I think the first caution came out. But I think we were really just trying to maintain what we got over the course of the run.
How big for you is a P4, the points you get, and putting yourself in position to be able to make that transfer in the top half of the field and jump up to the Coke Series? You know, I know there's 3 more races to go, but this seems to really be a showing of what you guys are capable of and could be.
Yes, I couldn't be prouder. I think it puts us in great position for these last 3 races. I mean, Dover is a very hairy track. You know how tight it is, how the banking is on the straightaways. There's a lot of carnage that ensues there, and I think going in with a little bit of relief to Dover, a track like it is really, really good for our season.
Vicente, before we let you go, sponsors, thank yous, shout outs, anybody that you need to give a call to, now's the time to do it.
First off, I'd like to thank Ashton Crowder, Garrett Maines, Michael Jean, Seth Ryder, I mean, just everybody at Elliott Sadler Esports for the work. I'd like to thank Musgrave Racing Co. They believed in me and helped me in real life, and I couldn't thank them enough. Wear Hansky Gloves, Stroker Industries, Josh Kosick for the paint scheme, Liam Brotherton for all the support, Alex Russell, and I mean, there's so many others, but thank you to every single person who has supported me.
It's been a big night, Vicente. Congratulations. Top 5 for you. Momentum going into the back half of the season. We'll see you next Tuesday to do it again.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
That's Vicente Salas, and we're seeing the social media, James Pike, already. Team owner Elliott Sadler chiming in on Twitter. Holy cow, cannot believe it. First pro win as a team owner and also 1-2-4 finish. And I believe there may be some adult beverages consumed tonight over at the Sadler household, no?
I just love that he's taken after Dale Jr., but hey, you know, if the Elliott Sadler Esports guys continue to perform the way they have, we may see Elliott be a fellow team owner like Dale Jr. in the Coke Series next year. Really strong first 3 races, highlighted, of course, by the nice performance, but it's just a really good, tight-knit group. I think it came through in the interviews that we just did. Beware of ESC. They are going to be a threat, not only tonight, but I think throughout the rest of the Pro Series, too.
Indeed. Here's the final results. Garrett Maines gets the win over Ashton Crowder, Nathan Lyon, Vicente Salas. You heard from the 4 of them. Alex McCollum fading to 5th at the end for Legacy. Matt Busa, one of his best runs of the season, comes home 6th. Michael Guest, 7th, was up towards the front all night long. Justin Bolton with a top 10 run in 8th. 9th for Mitchell DeYoung, and 10th for Taylor Hurst, James Pike.
11th tonight, Isaac Gann in the 22. Danny Hansen came home P12. P13 to the 77 of Ryan Doucette. Derek Justice with a solid 14th place finish. Brandon Cattell needed a good finish in the top 20. He gets it tonight. Finishes P15. Colin Bowden was 16th after 200 laps. Zach Nichols brought the 24 car home in 17th. Seth DeMerchant in the 57. Another one who needed to finish in the top 20 was 18th. Same for Stephen Wilson at 19th. And Brian Schoenberg completes the top 20, Blake.
And Femi Olot, who we were talking about being so strong early on in the night, he ends up with a 21st place finish. 22nd goes to Chris Overland. Jose Solis Jr. will finish up in the 23rd position. Dylan Duval, who was having a strong night until that contact with Alan Bose, finishes up in 24th. Michael Griglia comes up and finishes in the 25th position. Jarl Tyan, he was also a part of that carnage. He finishes up in 26th. Brian Mercurio also involved in an accident in 27th. Anthony Burrows was 28th, Blade Witt in 29th, and Jacob Seelman Santiago Tires rounds out the top 30's first car 1 lap down.
Alan Bose was 31st, the points leader taking a heavy hit, incoming points leader taking a heavy hit. Jake Matheson, 32nd. He was 2 laps down tonight at a track where we thought he could contend. Ditto for Donovan Strauss, who was 34th, behind Eric J. Smith, Zach Novak. This is where the danger zone really kicks in for the 2019 champion. Potential relegation if he can't rebound over the final 3 races. Eddie Kerner, 36th. Colin Keister, 37th. 38th, Michael Gonzalez. Malik Ray, the Daytona winner, 39th after major issues just past the halfway point. We take a look now at the series standings through 3 races, no drops. Mitchell DeYoung, now the championship leader, but that win tonight, James Pike, putting Garrett Maines to 2nd in the standings, just 3 markers back, and you look down on the 2nd column there as we get closer to where that transfer to relegation line is, and around Eddie Kerner, Alex McCollum, it is oh so tight.
A big night for McCollum to get himself in position. Also of note, just backtracking a little bit with their good finishes tonight, Ashton Crowder up to 4th, Vicente Salas up into the top 10 in points. So couldn't underscore how big a night it was for Elliott Sadler Esports. But yes, how fitting here that the top is a little bit more spread out than the bottom 20. And as you get down towards Kerner, who enters next week's race at Dover as the cutoff driver, it gets really, really tight and doesn't really slow up all that much once you clear 20th plate McCandless. Go all the way back to about the top 30 or so. It's maybe 15 points separating about 15 to 20 drivers fighting on either side of the bubble.
And see, this is what we knew was going to happen, and why this series is just so, it's just insanely competitive, everybody being so close, and why the desperation meter, particularly now that we're in the second half of the season, is going to continue to increase with each passing race. Dover, for all these guys that are right here above the cut line, they're in a good position, but we move forward to Dover, Charlotte, and Homestead. A couple of, obviously the Monster Mile unique in its own right, but a couple of more mile-and-a-half style racetracks that we'll get to in the next few weeks. And I think for some guys that's a good thing. They feel like they have some speed to be found. For others, it's almost time to hit the panic button. We are 3 races in, 3 races to go, and like you said, everybody around that cut line. And again, a lot can happen in these next 3 races.
A lot can happen in these next 3 races, and as we get set to close it off here, before we have a chance to close it off, James Pike, the thing that stands out to me first and foremost is Zach Novak being in danger of relegation at this point.
It's the same sort of luck, I think, that befell him in the Coke Series this year. He just struggled to find any sort of good fortune. It's one of the reasons why he's in the Pro Series, and it just continues to go here. I don't feel like these races have been reflective of his skill, of his talent. Whether or not it turns around in the next 3 races, we don't know. But Dover's going to be a tough track, and for the relative lack of carnage that we saw here at Richmond, with the way Dover self-cleans and how narrow the corner exits are in 2 and 4, and the way the backstretch funnels, I'm not convinced that we don't have a bit of a messy race at Dover where we really are going to start being able to cross some names off the list in terms of the folks who may have a chance to make the Coke Series. I think we're going to end up with more torn-up race cars next week. Dover's a really tough place to get around consistently well.
Blake McCandless, as far as you're concerned, there are a lot of big names on the outside looking in. Who has the best shot over the next 3 races that is in the danger zone that you think can get themselves back in over this back half?
Well, I think one name, I know he's all the way at the bottom, but there's just something that doesn't feel right about Colin Keister being this far out of the running. You feel like you obviously know he was the winner back at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the Coke Series, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him go up and win. And when you talk about other talent that's obviously below the cutoff line, I mean, just look at all those names right there. Plenty of favorites that we were talking about coming into this season that could make their way up there. It's just crazy to think that some of these guys are on the outside looking in, and especially at a track like Dover where wrecks can happen quickly. There's not a lot of room to go, and we could see a handful, nearly a quarter of the field wiped out in the blink of an eye. It's going to be something that's going to keep these drivers on your screen up at night the next 6 evenings until we pull up finally to Dover, Delaware.
Very quickly, a couple of things to note. Next Monday night, December 7th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, it is the Grit Ultimate Driver Challenge from the Charlotte Legends Oval, followed at 9 p.m. on the Podium 2 Twitch channel by Monday Night Racing presented by Toughco Flooring. It's the Super Late Models at Michigan International Speedway. That one going to be a barn burner. Our next race for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series will be from the Monster Mile Dover International Speedway, December 8th, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. That one that I'm particularly looking forward to. Always enjoy Dover, Delaware, and seeing who can survive Miles the Monster and who gets chewed up and spit out before it's all done. However, tonight it was all about Richmond Raceway, all about Richmond Raceway Esports, and all about Elliott Sadler Esports as Garrett Maines taking home a much-needed and very, very big victory for him. Congratulations to Garrett on the victory right now. For Tyler Hudson and Cisco Scaramouza at iRacing, for Gary Sexton and John Theodore at Podium Esports, for our producer Ryan Bauer, and of course for my broadcast partners Blake McCandless and James Pike, I'm Speed Sports Jacob Seelman. Thank you so much for watching round 3 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series, and we will see you in a week for round number 4 from the Monster Mile. Till we meet again.
Yeah. I'm ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it. I'm ready to do it. I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage.